Hi everyone, we're Katie Coulas
And Natasha Staheli.
from Yellow Ladybugs, and joining us today as we continue in our mission to reframe our understanding of behavior is Dr. Mona Delahooke. We're actually pinching ourselves that this is happening when we introduced the topic of reframing behavior in our first conference. We chose a quote from Mona to set the scene, which was, when you see a behavior that is problematic or confusing, the first question we should ask isn't how do we get rid of it, but rather what is this telling us about the child? And we have done so much in this space since then, but right now it's incredible to be going straight to the source of so much wisdom.
Mona Delahooke is an absolute trailblazer in shifting our understanding of behaviour. She is an internationally renowned child psychologist who aims to reduce suffering and increase resilience for children and families. Her paradigm shifting model offers a new way of understanding emotional and behavioural challenges, incorporating the latest neuroscience research to support relationships. As well as her incredible online presence, she is the best selling author of two groundbreaking books, Beyond Behaviours and Brain Body Parenting. She is also committed to challenging our education systems to update their practices from focusing on behaviour to promoting relational safety, which is another reason why we are very excited to have her here today. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank
Yeah, we are
you.
so grateful you're here today as well. We're really appreciative, and I'm sure our audience is too. So, Mona, we'll jump straight into questions. You're such a tremendous ally with an incredible reputation, not just for translating neuroscience into something that everyone can understand, but for the compassion and empathy you bring. And we are so honored, as we said, to have you here today. Can you start by summarizing your approach towards behavior, specifically why we need to look beyond behaviors and systems of securing compliance and instead towards supporting a child's body-based and emotional needs?
Well, that is the most important question that I was asking many years ago when I realized, after studying a lot of different things, including the brain and the body and neuroscience and development, was to view behaviors as just the tip of the iceberg. So if you imagine an iceberg, the tip is what you see, but underneath the waterline, hidden below, are all these things that contribute to behaviors. So what I found was our education system, really pretty much across the world, was looking at behaviors as the target, like just tip of the iceberg. But instead, when we think about viewing them as the signal of something very important, millions of things that are happening invisibly inside of children and adults and teenagers, then we have a whole new way, a more compassionate way, but also a more holistic way to understand our fellow humans.
Yes, absolutely. And I really love that you talked about what is going on invisibly inside the body, because, or inside the person, because that is what we're all about. Really, really looking at those hidden needs, what's going on inside. So with that lovely intro, I think we'll really now focus in on our particular community of autistic girls and young people who, as I've just said, their challenges are often less obvious and their needs are more hidden. So these are our ladybugs who are internalizing their behaviour, who aren't necessarily outwardly disruptive. They've been calm, compliant, apparently regulated throughout the school day, but when they get home, they either go into meltdown or shut down. And over time, we know that has a profound impact. So what is going on here, and what do both teachers and parents need to understand about this?
Well, I appreciate the question because I think it's so important to understand that many of our autistic girls and many children, first of all, are feeling very misunderstood and realizing that they may be acting in ways or moving their bodies in ways or doing something that isn't accepted as something that's valued. And so I'll just say off the bat that I think, this is a guess, but based on my experience, we have a lot of individuals who are masking, which means they're kind of pretending to act a certain way, or maybe feeling really tense inside, or anxious or shaky, or just what I use to describe our autonomic nervous system is colors. So, and again, everyone is different in how they experience sensations, but in that the red, blue, and green idea, when we have our different nervous systems, I think that vulnerable, feeling uncomfortable inside and looking like you might be okay on the outside. So the teacher might say, "Oh, they're doing fine." And they may be compliant, but inside very hypervigilant. We call that the combo zone, where you've got a mix of feeling kind of anxious on the inside, but on the outside, you may be looking a little shut down or a little overly compliant. So I'm concerned about our students who suffer kind of silently. And I love that you are bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Mona. That is such a really great explanation, and you painted the picture beautifully, because many of our ladybugs are misunderstood. They are often overlooked because they're not presenting as any distress, but it's all under the surface, as you said. And and parents get told all the time they're fine. But you talked about that hypervigilance, and that is just such a constant theme for our ladybugs, and it impacts it a lot, which I guess narrows us down to the next question, because we'd like to maybe dig a bit deeper here. And we've got two particularly challenging and distressing situations that arise within our community. And the first of this is something that unfortunately is too common, but we well understood, sorry, not at all well understood, is that when our neurodivergent young people start displaying more internalized behaviors of concern, including self-harm or suicidal ideation or restricted eating, this comes to the forefront when our ladybugs hit the teen and tween years. So often after the years of masking, like we've just described, and not having their hidden needs met. What's your advice for families on how to best support their loved ones who might be experiencing these difficult things?
Yes. And we can think about the layers, and the loading that you may feel as a teenager or an adolescent. I talk about the body budget, which is kind of a way to think about a complex term called allostasis, but we all have body budgets, and our body budgets get withdrawals and deposits every day. And so if we think about our neurodivergent youth, particularly those who are kind of not supported in a way that feels safe and that builds our self-confidence, those withdrawals can be happening a lot over the days, over the years. And as you just said, and as I mentioned before, the cost of masking is very heavy on the body budget. So I guess the first thing I would say is not to the parents, but to our society in general. Our culture needs to have a greater level of acceptance of neurodivergency, neurodivergent behaviors, neurodivergent speech, so that we can start to help others feel safe when they're masking, to know that they don't have to be. You can be who you are and be proud of it. And our differences can make us stronger rather than have us go underground. So part of what I want the message to our education system and to our society is that we really need to open our eyes and not judge behaviors that are different as being worse. And that's going to help our little yellow ladybugs that are growing up right now to feel safe and cozy at their schools and in their world as they are. So for parents, and and support and carers and supporters, I think what we need to do is to try to sensitively open up discussions with our daughters, with our children, about what it's like to be you, and to allow this sense of disclosure and vulnerability to be able to be talked about. Because what you can verbalize or write down, it could be a painting, it doesn't have to be words, but what you can express is going to be less likely to fester inside and make you feel bad about yourself. So open communication, parents carers taking really good care of their own body budget, so that you can feel like you can take a walk, or that you can bake together, or cook a meal, and just have an open place where the child or the teenager or young adult can feel safe to talk about what it's like to be them, as a buffer to those harmful feelings that start to cause us to feel depressed, or even worse, to self-harm. So I would say a close connection, and then of course finding communities of support. So whether that's a neurodivergent friendly therapist, or counselor, or group that you get together, like what you're doing, really, to help move the needle.
Thank you so much. That is a really beautiful, compassionate response to a very difficult question. And you're echoing what we hear from autistic adults, who we talk to a lot as an autistic-led community, who talk directly about what it's like to grow up feeling broken and wrong, and to have spent your early years trying to please people and do things right, and where that leaves you when you're an adult. And I really, that acceptance about neurodiversity and neurodivergence and all of these things, that, they say if we had these things when we were younger, it would have made such a difference to how I feel now as an adult. So you've echoed that beautifully. And I think you've talked about the loading on our young people. That really, really resonates with us. And again, we talk to a lot of autistic teens, and they say that, they talk about that. And being given the opportunity to talk about it is amazing, and we need the rest of the world to listen. So thank you very, very much for that. We're going to cover another angle now, which again is something which happens a lot in our community, and that is to discuss the topic of school refusal, or as we prefer to say, school can't. And this is a really hot topic in Australian schools right now, as it is around the world. And it requires a far more nuanced approach than simply saying that parents need to apply tough love to get their kids to school. So what is your advice for families who are in this situation right now? And what do our schools need to know about what's going on here?
It's such a good question. And I love the school can't rather than school refusal, because right there, school refusal has a kind of disordered tone to it. Like there's something maybe wrong with the child for refusing to go to school. And also implicit blame, I think. And oftentimes parents are told that they are supporting that, and that they have to, just like you said, be more strong about it, or have some consistent discipline or consequences, which really I understand from looking at it at the old paradigm, where behaviors are viewed as the target. But when we really look below, we truly understand that at the basis of school refusal is a body and brain that is not feeling safe at school. And so what I would love teachers to know, and parents to know too, that when a human doesn't feel safe in a setting, the tough love approach is going to make them feel less safe and less seen. So what we want to remember is something called co-regulation, meaning a warm, loving, or at least engaging, attuned adult can work with the child at school or the student or the teenager to help them feel partnered with, safe, and secure. And I write about stories where, this approach is taken, and, sometimes it takes a few weeks, but as Ross Greene says, children do well when they can, or if they can. And I agree. And when they can't, there's a reason. And the reason isn't to be stubborn or to be non-compliant. The reason is way deeper than that. And if we think about it truly, especially for our neurodivergent children, a simple task at school, such as a transition or a change in plans, which happens all the time, could be so frightening and so destabilizing that simply a school day can feel overwhelming. And this is what we need to address, to shift the environment, not to blame the student.
Yes, absolutely. Shift the environment, not blame the student. We are 100% on board. And you said it, and I was like, aha, when you said body and brain is not safe. We need to make sure that with deeper look, and absolutely on board with you. Thank you for sharing that message.
Yeah.
And I guess,
and I wanted to add, I just think
yeah.
one thing for parents who are listening, I definitely don't want parents to think that they are doing anything to help to contribute to their child not feeling safe. So this neuroception, this subconscious detection of threat and safety is very mysterious. And I just want parents to know, no blame, no shame. You are doing the best job you can. So this isn't something that's caused by parents, because I think that even in the field of mental health, in psychology, there's this long history of blaming and shaming parents.
Yeah.
True.
So true.
So
We had in
true.
Australia recently with someone saying that parents need to just use tough love. No, let's stop blaming and shaming. And even teachers who are doing their best as well on like you said, on a neuroception level, it's so complicated, and we just need to look deeper at that. And just so powerful. Thank you so much for that. And sticking with the school setting, we have such an amazing community of teachers and educators watching this who are genuinely trying to make a change in their classroom, but are bound by such an often inflexible system that is largely still adhering to old methods of behaviour management. And we know you're such an advocate for systemic change. But today we'd love to put the power directly into the hands of our teachers who are listening at home. What advice do you have for them, and how they can maybe introduce neuroscience-based approach towards behaviour in their classroom? And how can we support our teachers to bring about change from like the ground up? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's amazing that there are teachers in this community who'll be listening to all your wonderful speakers. And first of all, I would just say that for many teachers, you're in an uphill battle. Teachers in the US, in Australia, in the UK, in Western Europe. I mean, you are in an uphill battle because the training that you get is based on behavior science. So my first thing to say to teachers is, our best tool is self-compassion. Just have so much compassion, because what you've been trained with, and what our culture generally views as, the best way to have a controlled classroom is to have a very authoritative and controlling teacher, is really in our cultural DNA. So understand that what we're talking about is a new paradigm. So again, a lot of compassion for, wow, okay, I'm in a district, or I have a school head or principal who wouldn't understand this maybe, but all you really need is one other person in a school who you can talk to about this, and you may want to start with a simple article. I can put in your notes some simple articles about the lens shift in a classroom or in a school that talked about just one small way to shift how we're looking at a child's behavior, for example, can really make the difference. So I think one maybe piece of advice I would give is, give yourself permission to not view a challenging behavior as something that you need to consequence or punish. Give yourself permission to see a behavior as a stress response. And if you have neurodivergent or behaviorally challenged or developmentally different rates of development in the children you work, in the students you work with, which is probably all teachers, to understand that the cost of being in that sensory environment of a classroom is going to be different for each and every student. And the cost is going to be higher for some students. And we believe that the cost for our neurodivergent and autistic students is higher due to those differences in processing sensory information.
Yeah.
So I just said a mouthful, but I guess I just wanted to explain that there's so much more to behaviors, and that there are really good reasons for students moving their bodies and their mouths the way they are. It's really an indication of their needing more accommodations, more warmth, more acceptance, and just a new lens.
Yeah.
Absolutely spot on.
I love that. And it's just powerful, I think, just to know that, just to, and as you say, to give yourself permission to look at what's going on with that behavior you're seeing, to look at it differently and understand that it's a stress response, as you say. And that's something we are very, very passionately advocating for in Yellow Ladybugs. We're very lucky we get to work with our local Department of Education on a regular basis, and we are really, really pushing this message because it makes such a difference. And as parents, we see that with our own kids when they find that teacher who looks at them with compassion and connection and all of those things. So it can be done, and I think it's okay to, if you've not understood that before as a teacher, it's absolutely fine to learn. We all evolve and learn. So yeah, and thank you. And on that note, that actually brings us to our next question really nicely. And you talk so passionately about the paradigm shift and understanding behavior, and paradigm shift, lens shift. We know this is where we can make the most impact, and we really want to help people move forwards with their approach towards behavior and to evolve their thinking. As the saying goes, when we know better, we do better. But what is your advice for parents or educators or even health professionals who are still a bit stuck, perhaps, and holding on to those old compliance-based methods, reward and consequence systems, the way they were brought up, the way they were trained? We get that. So how do we move on from that? How do we own our mistakes? And there's a lovely term at the moment, moving from rupture to repair. So would love your thoughts on that.
I love the way you frame the questions. These are great questions, and I'm so grateful that you're having an impact. I know are beyond your education system, but that educators are listening to this beautiful conversation, sometimes for the first time. So I will continue the theme of compassion to say that many of us weren't raised this way, right? Many educators may not have it in what we call the procedural memory, because our brain is a predictive machine, and it goes on its own based on our past experiences. So the first thing I'd say is, if these principles sound kind of unusual or new, that's okay. Allow that. You don't have to change everything, but just know that you're not alone, and that in neuroscience, this information is just percolating into our other systems, and there's a very strong lobby and a lot of money across the world in behavioral technologies. So I say that as a neutral statement only because I want teachers to know that when there are a lot of finances involved and organizations that put on trainings for teachers, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And I think we just need to put that out there to understand that sometimes when businesses are that strong, it's going to take a while for the paradigm shifters, as I call them, the compassionate disruptors, to say, you know what? This is not really serving our children. Look at the rates of anxiety and depression in autistic young adults and teenagers. They are so high. And I was a speaker at the the Stanford University. It's an important university in California, the Stanford University Neurodiversity Summit. And we did a panel on neurodivergence and trauma. And I was a panel as a therapist, but my co-panelist, who is amazing, an autistic speech and language therapist, talked about the cost of being in school. That was, again, going back to feeling like you don't fit in. So what I would say to teachers is your best teachers are autistic people. And I love yellow ladybugs, and I love that you guys are bringing this into our conversation. You can read the blogs and hear what our students are begging for, and that is, please understand the stress load that our neurodivergent students are carrying just to stay in the game. And without sufficient accommodations in that environment, and that could be anything from having the walls have some padding that absorbs some of the sounds. It could be, again, going back to compassion and always giving the most generous interpretation of a behavior rather than viewing it through the lens of compliance. Small things and big things.
Yeah. My gosh, so spot on, Mona. And I love how you keep on referring back to the cost of being at school. It's such a powerful way to frame it and understand it. And I would say, from our specific community, being autistic girls, the cost is so heavy because of all those unmet needs throughout the primary or early school years of not being understood and not being, looking fine and masking. And this is why we're seeing such a huge cost in the 12, 13, 14, 15-year age bracket, and the link to mental health. And those teachers who are still using the old approaches that they think might work. I love how you said, how is this actually serving our children? And that's something to question. Like, if you're trying something and it's not working, why continue down that path? So thank you so much for that beautiful, great answer. So we're going to ask you to speak directly to two very important groups within our community. So first, to our parents, and especially those who are exhausted, burnt out, who often deeply distressed by their children's struggles. I'm an autistic parent and I've got neurodivergent children, and it's a lot. And we know that co-regulation is so important, and it's also really, really hard when we are also all of those things that I mentioned above. What would you say to these parents?
First of all, as the thought of the burdens and the responsibility of being a parent, and I guess I'll use the cost of not feeling that your child may be treasured and feeling safe outside in the world is one of the heaviest costs a parent can bear. So for parents, so much love and compassion I'm extending to you. And please, please take good care of your body budgets. I know it might feel like there's no energy left at the end of the day because the extra activities and follow up and in it that you are doing is exhausting in and of itself. But I will say that you are the most important co-regulator, meaning the most important person that will stabilize your child's nervous system, just as all parents are. So you are the most important tool in your tool chest. Take good care of yourself, find support when you can from other parents, and look for now, luckily, that we have large online communities of support for parents. So I would say, look for your community, look for that support, take good care of yourself, have regular physical checkups, because some studies are suggesting that parents of children with special needs have additional inflammation in their body. It's, I'm very holistic. So I'm thinking that stress is in our culture, but we're viewing our children have different stress loads, and that's also stressful to the parents. So take really good care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Thank you for that. And I know I've heard you talk before about, as parents, we can actually look to our own interoceptive awareness as well. And, as parents of neurodivergent children, a lot of us know about interoception now, but it's that next step to take it to yourself and to understand what's happening inside your body. And when that heart is racing and all those hormones are racing around, it's grounding just to be aware of that even, I think.
Good point.
That's a great point. And if you can't put a word to it, that's okay, because sometimes all you feel is like you might feel tingles inside, or you might feel like your body is going to sleep. Whatever, it doesn't matter what you can become aware of. Anything is useful. Any kind of awareness. It doesn't have to be an emotion. It could be a sensation, because that is connecting to your body, and that's healthy for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So another group we'd love you to speak to is actually to our young people who face so many barriers to getting the understanding, support, and accommodations they need. And we know you believe how important it is to give our children access to their own voice, agency, autonomy, and to do so from a place of curiosity and empathy. So what is your message to any of our young people who are watching today?
Well, I'd like to say that I believe our differences are what make us each brilliant, not how alike we are. And I know you're living in spaces in a culture that doesn't always see differences in how you maybe things you're interested in, or the way you move your body, or some of those things that make you beautifully unique and a miracle may not always be appreciated. But I want you to know that there are people in the world who appreciate that, and there will be more and more. So find your people, find communities, find friends who get you, and then find safe adults that you can talk to about what it's like sometimes to not feel comfortable just being who you are, and know that you may feel lonely sometimes, but know that you're really not alone. There are so many people in the world and in your family and in your community who love you.
Beautiful. That is such a nice way to finish off that question, because that's spot on. Feeling alone is such a big reason why so many of our community feel, so empty, so disconnected from their community and the trauma they've had to go through, feeling that as young people. And find your people, such a great message. And thank you for that beautiful, kind-hearted response. And we hope many ladybugs hear that from adults and children alike, hear that around the world. I've got a bonus question for you if you've got a couple more minutes, Mona. So even with the most supportive home environments, of ones that can use curiosity and empathy, and a school environment that already undertakes a lot of the strategies that we're suggesting here today, there can be still children who experience distress and complex, challenging behaviors of concern. They might go down what's known as conduct disorder, or they might get labeled with words such as being sociopathic. Is there any advice for families who are navigating that that direction with their older teens? Because we know we can shift things like using empathy and curiosity, but what happens when that's not working, or we're not seeing, even if the environment's right? What's your advice there?
Yes, a very good question. And the word that comes to my mind is complexity, because as we age, and in our range of neurodivergency, there are the pathways to self-regulation, which allow people to have more control over their emotions, their behaviors, are complex. So I would say, first of all, if you're a teacher or a parent and you see that self-regulation, that is this ability to have calmness in your body, and you have people who are looking defiant or are rising to the level of having others think that they have a DSM diagnosis, like oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorders. I usually like to think big picture and have a team, a supportive team. The types of therapist training that can be useful are ones that align with the DIR philosophy. Like, there's a little bit of controversy on that, but it's for icdl.com. It's a group. It has its director is autistic. It's very neurodivergent friendly, and they have groups of therapists, consultants around the globe who can help guide you to create a team to see why that student, why that teenager is beginning to have such difficulty with those behaviors. So I'd say find a supportive team to help you look at all the angles that will help you get self-regulation more on board, and understand that the window for self-regulation never closes. So if you have a 17 or 18-year-old who is really struggling, that doesn't mean that there aren't solutions that are going to work. We just have to think complexly about complex.
That's thank you so much, because I know a lot of families who are struggling that say, we are trying all these approaches and it's still not enough. And I think the missing piece is what you explain. It needs a complex solution of people who understand it at that level. And we'll make sure we have those resources or links to what you described.
Great.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that will help families feel like it's not that you're doing something wrong, because even as a psychologist with many years of training, I for many of the clients we work with, I rely on my team. There may be an OT for sensory processing, a beautiful developmental pediatrician, and a speech and language person. There may be, and then an educator. So think complexly and know that it's not you. It's just that you haven't found the right combination yet.
Your insights are just so incredible for our community, and we're so grateful. We've run out of questions. You've done such a great job of answering them all so succinctly. So thank you so much from the bottom of our heart, and for being such an incredible ally for neurodivergent people around the world and our families. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're really excited to share this. It's going to go far and wide. We're making the change. It's exciting. Thank you, Mona, so much.
It's so exciting. It is my great pleasure and honor. Thanks so much for having me.